Now, 2019 has also been the year of the regulators, both sharpening teeth under pressure to bark and bite at corporate Australia hard.
ACCC Chief Rod Sims had a packed year, even by his standards, taking on big tech in FANG and banks and energy, telcos and ports and rail. But not everything has gone to the regulators' way in courts, and we started off asking him about his reaction to the digital platform's response.
We were delighted with the government's response, and I say that because essentially they've picked up the essence of what we were recommending. So to say anything else but that we were delighted would be a bit churlish in the extreme.
Some sort of code was your top recommendation, wasn't it?
That's right, that's right. And a lot of other recommendations picked up as well, and you know, some of the things we suggested did require more work. So dealing with the privacy issues and the way they've described next year was pretty much what we had in mind. They've singled those issues out for getting dealt with and put them in such a way that they're well-defined problems and they will get dealt with. So no, we were delighted by the response.
Okay, something that stuck out to me and others is this code of conduct was drawn up.
Yeah.
That has been drawn up with the ACCC and the media companies and the digital platforms, but it will be a voluntary code. So anything at this point in terms of revenue sharing or algorithm, you know, reporting on some of the algorithms and how that works, that will still be voluntary. Is this missing a beat perhaps in making this voluntary and not enforcing this against the digital platforms?
I think there's been a misunderstanding here. What is being said is that give the parties, we said 9 months, the government's given them 11 months to negotiate and see where that gets to. The benefit of that is that if you simply were to impose a code, you wouldn't be as well informed as you would be with the negotiations, where parties say what they want and react to each other. But if they come to a good spot and that code is agreed, then it's still something that, while voluntarily put together, would then be enforceable. So there is that. If they don't get far enough in the negotiations, if we perhaps feel they're not negotiating in good faith, or at the end of the day the government doesn't feel that it's sufficient, then I think the government made it very clear yesterday in their response that they would consider a mandatory code.
I do remember when you released the initial report and you said what struck you was the digital platforms constantly saying, trust us, just don't enforce, don't make us abide by any new laws or regulations.
Yes.
Aren't we doing that again by putting this off to almost the end of next year to wait for a voluntary code?
No, I don't think so, with respect. What we in the same time I said that, I also said we were recommending 3 or 4 codes, but these aren't, what I said quite clearly is these are enforceable codes, and they're codes that, if they're unsatisfactory, can be imposed by the regulator. So voluntary gives someone a chance to, in their way, meet the need, and in the case of the media, gives both sides the ability to meet the need.
More broadly, it's been quite a year for you. You've taken a lot of court action, time when, you know, regulators are very much being empowered. You've lost, though, 6 court cases this year? We've still got waiting on the TPG Vodafone. You've said, look, we have a problem. We need a real rethink about this when you look at, you know, decisions like the Horizon sale. What did you mean by that?
Well, just to clarify firstly, if I could, our record of winning cases, if you think of both our merger cases and our enforcement cases, is about 85%. So we have a pretty good track record.
But recently it's been a run of quite tough ones on the merger side, you said.
On the merger side, yes, but not on the enforcement side more generally. And, you know, if you're not losing a few cases, you're not doing your job. Yeah. So, yes, on the merger side, we've lost a number of cases. I mean, the Pacific National Horizon one was just really interesting because the judge found that there was a substantial lessening of competition, which is normally the difficult issue for us to prove. But the judge then accepted something that was offered on the last day, which was a behavioural undertaking where basically Pacific National said, we'll behave well towards competitors. And so the judge said, fine.
And you don't believe that was going to work?
No.
Yeah.
I don't believe it
more
can.
broadly, if we go to TPG Vodafone, you also said, look, to prove a merger substantially lessens competition is too high. I mean, that's becoming quite challenging.
Oh, look, it is. I think, though, Tiki, I don't have a problem with the words substantially lessen competition. I think that's a good set of words to use. The question is, what is the burden of proof, in the sense that, I might think that if somebody's got a lot of market power, they'll use it to their advantage. And my 20 years of being involved in the private sector suggests that's usually the case. But there seems to be a view out there that people will act, commercial entities will act in some benevolent way that will see them not exercising their market power. So this is really, what's the burden of proof? What can you infer that someone will do? What is it you have to prove when, after all, you're forward-looking?
Return to the digital giants briefly. You have taken action against Google this year. You said when you were releasing your first report that this had triggered several investigations. Can we expect more enforcement action against the digital giants next year?
When we released the report in July, we said we had 5 in-depth investigations. Now, we don't have the resources to do more than about one at a time, because we cover the whole sector. Now we've got a bit more resources from yesterday's announcement that will help us. But these things are always resource intensive. But we've sort of added to the 5 now as we've uncovered other things. So I think we've got so many investigations on that I'd be surprised if there weren't some more court actions. But keep in mind, we are resource stretched, so it'll take time to work them through.
Rod, can I ask you about the cartel case that you've got going against ANZ and other banks? And this one of these parties has immunity. Now, this whole immunity process is under scrutiny. Members of the ACCC will be being cross-examined. How do you think this is going to go, and do you have concerns about this going forward?
Oh, look, it's a criminal matter, Tiki, so I really don't want to get into anything to do with the case. All I'll say is that immunity programs are used literally right around the world. Obviously with cartels you're talking about covert behaviour where it's very hard to work out what's going on. So every competition regulator around the world that we would identify with has these immunity programs. The US has been using it for decades.
But it looks as though the defence is trying to allege there was interference in this process with some
Well, I can't comment on the case. What I do know is that, yes, they're raising a lot of issues, and of course that's causing a lot of delays to get the court case underway in the federal court. So, but look, it's a case that's a criminal matter, and I'm very sensitive to stay right away.
One of your jobs next year will be this new inquiry into mortgage pricing between the so-called front book and the back book, the longer term and shorter term. Now, in many businesses, Rod, offering new customers special deals is normal. I mean, if we go to petrol, for example, you've often said people need to shop around as well, so I've got to ask, is this really political? Have you been drawn into something which is political?
Not at all, Tiki, not at all. Look, we've made this point in relation to energy, and we've made it in banking, and I guess there has been a bit of misinterpretation, so I'm actually very pleased you've asked. We're not saying in any way it's illegal. We're not in any way saying it's unethical. We're the consumer regulator. We're just saying to consumers, be aware that if you stay with one entity, be it banking, be it energy, over time, and you're not inquiring about better rates.
But there has been intervention in the electricity industry. Will this lead to intervention in the banking industry?
No, it's a different matter there, Tiki, in my view. In electricity, what you had was the electricity industry marketing, in a sense, purely by discounts. So they'd be out there, someone a long time ago said, I'll give you 5% discount, someone said 10, then it got up to 40 and 45. Now, how did they do that? They did that by pushing up the standing offer from which the discount occurred. But it had two problems. One was they each had their own standing offer. So you had no idea. Literally, we could show you where a 45% discount was a worse deal than zero discount. So it's completely confusing. The other point was you've got 15% of households, 20% more of small businesses who are on these rates. Now you can argue, look, if they're silly enough not to shop around, that's their problem. But sometimes it's difficult for people. Small business often just doesn't have the time. So really, should they have been paying sometimes double what other people paid? I think the electricity industry let that get out of hand. I have a lot of evidence that they think so too. They were getting warned, you know, charging people.
But the same's not true of banking.
No. I mean, you're not talking. I mean, this is people paying double. So with banking, all we're saying is, look, you might save a few basis points if you ring them up and say, I'm thinking of moving. And I reckon you probably will. And so my job to help consumers is to say, there might be a couple of $1,000s in a phone call. Go for it. That's all we're doing.
Rod Sims, you've got so much on your plate. Thank you so much for sharing just some of it with us.
Thank you.